Hi and good morning and welcome to this week's yoga sequence. And today we're going to do a little bit of a stronger yoga practice that's really good for things like hamstrings. It's really useful for sports people, runners, cyclists and things like that who tend to have quite tight hamstrings. So thank you for joining me today. So normally I would try to do something without using props, but it's actually quite useful to have a couple of props today if you have some. Now I've got a yoga strap or a yoga belt. Now if you haven't got one of these, you can use either a dressing gown belt, a tie, a normal belt, or even something like a towel or a t-shirt that you can actually use as well, that sort of you don't mind stretching a little bit, just to give you a little bit of extra tension. And also I've got a couple of yoga blocks or bricks. If you haven't got yoga bricks, you can use a book if you want to. If you've got a couple of books that's sort of a similar height, it's also quite useful. It's not that you need them, just that it might be useful if you have them, if you do need them for a little bit of extra support. But that's not as essential probably as the belt. So we'll put these to the side. So we're going to do sort of working on the hamstring. We're going to be working sort of just trying to get the hip flexors open. We're trying to open up the hips a little bit more as well. So we'll give you a little bit more flexibility in that sort of like the hip and the buttocks and that sort of area as well. Okay, so we're going to start off on our backs. So having the belt on your tummy. So we're going to start off with the feet nice and flat on the floor. And maybe hips about or knees about hip width apart. So try to make sure that you're really well sort of glued in and grounded into the floor. So make sure that the chest is nice and open, bring the shoulder blades underneath the back, drawing the shoulders away from the ears, and just feel that lovely connection to the earth. So we're going to start off with the right leg. So we're going to bring the right knee in towards the chest. So again, we're not going to be overextending this area, so if it feels a little bit tight, I mean, that's absolutely fine. Using the breath will really help release it a little bit if you need to. Excuse me. So again, you can keep this knee nice and bent if you need to. But just be aware of how that feels in the hip. It might be a little bit stiff. So we're going to get the belt, we're going to pop that over the ball of the foot, and then bring that leg up into the air. So the idea with this, we're not overstretching that hamstring, we're just trying to be aware of how that feels. So again, it might be a little bit tight, so again, just bending the knee is absolutely fine if you need to. Just being aware of how that feels in that hamstring. But again, we're not overstretching and we're not trying to draw the nose towards the knee or the knee towards the nose or anything like that. We're just trying to be aware of how that actually feels. Again, using the breath. Engaging that core a little bit as well. So maybe just pulling the belly back to the spine. And then if you want to, what we're going to try and do is just stretch out the bottom leg. So very gently sliding it down on the mat. And again, you're increasing that stretch in that hamstring area, so you might find you need to either bend the knee a little bit more or just come slightly further away from your head. But again, either's fine. Now we're trying to give a little bit of strength in this pose as well, so try to make sure that the bottom leg is really pushed down into the mat. So it's also nice just to push the heel away, making the toes nice and strong. So it just gives you a little bit of extra stability and also bringing that belly back to the spine, so really engaging that core. And just feeling how that feels in that hamstring. Okay, so we're going to bring the belt into our right hand. Now it's probably good to bring your left hand just onto that hip to give you some stability. And then very gently we're going to move that right leg out to the right. Now the main thing with this is not overstretching it. Most people tend to find that they want to just tip over, but trying to keep the shoulder blades nice and strong and keep the belly really engaged. So it's like a very gentle sort of tipping point, as if you feel you might just tip over a little bit, but you might not. So we're trying to stay on that side of that tipping point, keeping the bottom leg strong, really pushing it down into the floor. And just being aware of how that feels on the inside of the thigh again, and then bending that knee if you need to. Or if it starts shaking a little bit, you probably do need to actually bend that knee. And then we're going to just bring the leg back to centre, swapping the hands, bring the right hand onto the floor, and just drawing that right leg over to the left. Now again, bending that knee if you need to, because you'll probably find a really strong stretch on the outside of that thigh, maybe onto the back of the knee. Trying to keep the shoulder blades flat, so we're not trying to tip over again, we're just having that awareness of how that feels. And then drawing the leg back to centre, and then releasing that foot and drawing that knee back into the chest, and just see if that feels a little bit easier in the hip. And again, you can bend that bottom knee if you want to. Again, we're not being too strict, it's really a case of just what feels right for you, and then bringing that leg to join the other one. So keeping the right leg bent, we're going to draw the left leg into the chest. And again, just be aware of how that feels. It might feel a little bit looser or a bit tighter on one side, which is absolutely fine. Again, just being aware of that lovely sensation of how that feels. Using the breath. Again, grabbing hold of your belt and placing it over the ball of the foot, and just bringing that leg up into the air. Again, bending the knees if you need to. We're not overstretching it, we're just being aware of how that feels. Using the breath. And then very gently sliding the right leg down the floor, straightening that leg, pushing the leg right into the floor, really strong, pushing the heel away, making the toes nice and strong up towards the ceiling, keeping the shoulder blades down the back, really engaging with that floor. And again, just very gently, just see if you can either bend the knee if that's too strong, or very gently just see if you can ease that leg slightly closer. And now getting the belt into the left hand, bring the right hand onto that right hip to give you some stability, making sure that you're well engaged with the mat, pushing the shoulder blades down. Just going to draw that leg out to the left. And again, just being aware of that tipping point where you feel you can't control it and you're actually going to go tipping over to the left hand side. So keeping the belly really strong, pulling the belly back to the spine, bottom leg nice and strong. Shoulder blades engaged. Just enjoy that lovely stretch. And then bringing the leg back to centre, swapping the hands, bringing the left hand onto the floor. And again, bend the knee if you need to, and just drawing that leg out to the right. And again, we're trying to stay nicely balanced on this side, so keeping the shoulder blades down, being aware of that tightness in the back of in the hamstring or into the side of the leg. Bend the knee if you need to. And then bringing the leg back to centre. And again, just releasing that knee into the chest, and just see if that feels slightly easier into that hip. And then returning it back in. So we've got both feet now flat on the floor. So we're going to get the right foot and drop that over top of the left knee. And you've got a little hole there. So we're going to grab hold of that left thigh and then just draw it closer in towards the chest. So you should feel a lovely stretch on the back of the right buttock, into the back of the thigh. Now if you can't feel that stretch, just try closing up that leg a little bit so it's slightly more crossed over, and that sort of intensifies that stretch a little bit in that area. Now if you are struggling to bring that knee slightly closer, again you can use the belt, just pop it behind that thigh and just use that just to pull that leg in. But again, we're not overstretching it. If you're just doing that just to get it closer, if you're being competitive, then try just relax it down a little bit. We're not trying to damage ourselves or hurt ourselves in any way. obviously if you want to, then you can see if you can just straighten that left leg. And if you want to change the grip, so you're grabbing hold of the calf, and just see if you can draw that slightly closer in. That's absolutely fine. And then releasing that leg back down. We're going to keep the right foot on the right knee, and then use the weight of that right leg just to draw both legs over to the right. Enjoy that lovely stretch in the left side of the body. And then coming back to centre. So returning the right foot back onto the ground, bending the left knee, and placing the left foot onto the right knee. Again, so just grabbing hold of the back of the right thigh, drawing that in towards the chest. So again, you might find you've got more flexibility on one side than the other. I know my left side tends to be a lot looser than my right. So sometimes it's easier on one side than it is on the other, but just enjoying that sensation of that stretch in the buttock. And again, using the belt if you need to, just to draw it slightly closer. And use the breath. And then if you want to, again, you don't have to. If you're feeling you want to though, you can straighten up that right leg. Just grab hold of the back of the calf and just see if you can draw that leg slightly closer in. But again, you don't have to. You can keep it bent if you want to. It's just going to be something that you can work up to if you need to. And then releasing the right foot down onto the floor, keeping the left foot onto that right knee. And then just drawing the right leg over to the left and enjoying that lovely stretch on the outside of the right side of the body, all the way up to the chest. And then coming back to centre. So now we're going to grab hold of the back of the thighs. We're going to come up to a seated position. Okay. So we're going to come onto all fours. So bringing the hands underneath your shoulders and your knees hip width apart underneath your hips, making sure that your fingers are really well gripped in towards the floor, pushing away from the floor. So we're not sitting into the shoulders, we're really pushing away. So we're really activating that grounding sensation into the floor. And curl the toes under, push back with the hands, straightening up the legs. And again, just enjoy that sensation, bending the knees to start off with, and just enjoying that sensation in the shoulders. And straightening the legs. Very gently lowering the heels. Maybe walking the feet out, so bringing the right heel back down to the ground, bending the left leg, dropping the left foot, bending the right. And just do the alternating from one to the other. Really enjoy that stretch. And then coming onto the toes, pushing down, bending the knees. And then walking the hands back to join the feet. Staying in that lovely forward fold. So again, bending the knees to give you a little bit of extra stability, but obviously we're trying to protect the lower back. We're not overstretching the legs. And maybe just interlocking the arms. Just enjoying rocking from side to side. Turn the hands back to the floor, bending the knees, and then coming back up to standing. Okay, so we've got our blocks. Now you don't necessarily need to use blocks. You can if you want to, but do what feels right for you. But if you are using a couple of blocks or a couple of books, you need to bring them to the front of the mat. Okay, so we're going to come to the back. So again, not overstretching the hamstrings, just being aware of how that feels with you. Obviously we're going to bring the left leg forward first. So try to not overextend, so we're not having quite a long stance, we're just doing what feels right for you. So ideally we should be able to get the back heel on the floor. Try to make sure that your feet are hip width apart. So don't bring one foot behind the other because you've got less stability that way. So make sure that the feet are hip width apart, so maybe even as wide as the mat if that suits you. So we're trying to have the legs nice and straight, so if you do need to bring your feet together again, that's absolutely fine. We're trying to bring that right hip forward, left hip back. Okay. So again, it's a really strong posture in the feet. Always try to imagine that you're trying to rip the mat in two. So as we're going to bring the front foot forward and the back foot back. So we're really engaging those legs as if you're trying to rip that mat. Trying to have a lovely, strong, upright posture. So also bring the shoulder blades together as if you're trying to just grip a pencil between the shoulder blades. Keeping the chest nice and open, which is really, really good to have a nice open chest because most people tend to find that they curl up and it does affect the breathing. And obviously if you're doing running or sports, you need to have that lovely open chest. So again, just having that lovely shoulders back, down the back, hands on the hips, ripping that mat apart with your feet. We're going to come forward into a nice flat back. Okay, so if you have got blocks, making sure that underneath your shoulders, and now you can adjust your feet. So if you want to have a slightly longer stance, you can. But again, just try to make sure it's nice and comfortable. If you've got a couple of books that you can use, you can bring them on the floor as well. Or if you want to, again, just lower the bricks down a little bit, you can, or you can do it without bricks. Trying to keep a nice flat back. And then if you want to, again, see if you can just bring the nose down towards the knee. Coming back up to a flat back. Again, try and imagine you're ripping that mat apart, really feel that stability in the feet. We're going to get the hands and interlock them behind the back, drawing the fingers down towards the bottom. And releasing that down, bending the the left knee, and just drawing the left leg behind us. So I can move slightly forward, that would be better. Again, into a nice lunge. And again, just rocking backwards and forwards here. Again, here that lovely hip flexor stretch, pushing the back foot away from you so you're really, really nice and strong. And then very gently lowering the right knee down onto the floor, flattening the back foot. Coming up into a nice open chest. Try to make sure that this front foot as well is sort of perpendicular to the floor so you're not overshooting. You're just trying to keep it nice and level. Okay. And then walking the hands back, either side of your bottom. So again, if you have got books, you can bring your hands onto those and walk your hands back if you want to, if you're struggling to actually touch the floor. Again, just to really feel a lovely strong leg, really engaging the back of the leg. And then pointing the toe. And then flexing again. And then walking the hands back. Bring the hands either side of that front foot. Curl the back leg under. And then bring the front foot, join the back into another downward dog. Again, enjoying that lovely stretch. Walking out the feet. Bending the knees. Walking the hands back. Join the feet. And keeping the knees nicely bent, letting the head drop down. Slowly coming up to standing. Wonderful. Now we do the second side. So again, If you've got blocks, you can use the blocks, bring the blocks in front of you. But we're going to bring the right leg forward and the left leg back. Again, trying to make sure that your feet are hip width apart to give you some stability. And again, it doesn't really matter how wide that stance is, but try to get the back leg down so that you can actually get the heel down towards the floor. Okay, so straight legs if you can. Again, bring the front leg, so you're trying to push the front leg away from the back, so you're trying to split that mat in two. Bring the hands onto the hips, shoulders down the back, a little lovely pencil between the shoulder blades. Keep a nice flat back, coming down. And again, if you bring your hands onto the floor, you can do, again, just adjusting the feet, or having a couple of blocks or books underneath your hands if you need to. And then drawing the nose down towards the knee. Again, feel those sort of sensation in the feet. You need to be able to still feel your feet to give you that stability. So trying to keep that lovely pressure on the feet, pushing away with the feet. Coming back up to a flat back. Bring the hands behind the back, drawing them down towards the bottom. Really enjoying that lovely sensation of openness in the chest and the legs. Keeping the breath really strong and steady. And then very gently bringing the hands either side of the front leg, bending the front knee, bring the back leg behind into a nice lunge. Again, just rocking backwards and forwards on that hip flexor. Making sure this front leg is perpendicular to the floor, so you're not overshooting, you're trying to keep it nice and level. Pushing that back heel away from you. And then bringing the back leg onto the floor. Flatten the front foot. And very gently just walking the feet or the hands back, stretching that front leg. And again, pointing and flexing the toes. Just really enjoy that lovely stretch. And walking the hands back to join the feet. Curling that toe under, bringing the knee off the floor. And then planting the hands either side of that front foot, bringing the front foot to join the back foot into a nice downward dog. And again, just walking out the feet, enjoying that lovely stretch and openness in the chest. And then bringing the knees back onto the floor. So maybe bring the knees as wide as the mat, toes together, and then very gently just bring yourself down onto the mat. So again here, you can either have your arms into extended child pose with your hands out in front, or you could just let them drop to the side. And then just rest here with the chest resting on the mat. Again, this is a really lovely restorative pose, so it's a really nice way just to finish off your practice and just allow the hips to release. And very gently pushing yourself up to a seated position. And then maybe just having a few rests. Obviously this isn't a really nice time for you to go into a nice corpse pose, shavasana, or a nice meditation at the end of your practice, just to allow your body just to integrate all the stuff that we've done with the legs. Really, really nice just to have a little bit of a quiet time, even for a couple of minutes, just at the end of each practice. It's really nice just to get yourself all ready for whatever you've got ahead later in your day. So thank you so much for joining me today. I'll hopefully see you next week. Namaste. Thank you so much. Bye bye.